Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm super excited to share something new that we've been working on. Since we're always looking for ways to bring you more entertainment, we're introducing a compilation from That Chapter YouTube channel to bring you disturbing stories for the dark. Mike O, aka That Chapter, is one of the most captivating true crime storytellers on the internet. Since 2017, this Irish creator has amassed 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube due to his extensive research, charisma, and highlighting the victims of chilling crime cases, some of which remain unsolved. Averaging over 1 million plus views per video, Mike has cultivated a dedicated fan base, bringing subtle comedy to his videos without dehumanizing the victims. Thanks again to Mike O for the inspiration, and if you like this video, don't forget to give them a like and subscribe as well. So if you're as excited as I am, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming content. And if you have any thoughts or ideas on what you'd like to see, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Let's get started.
Hey you and welcome, my name is Mike, and in this video we're going to the bourbon capital of the world. Nope, it's not my kitchen cabinet, it is Bardstown, Kentucky. Bardstown, Kentucky has a population of just over 14,000. It was voted the most beautiful small town in America, and also boasts of being the bourbon capital of the world. And it is also home to one of the strangest cases I have come across. In the area, there have been 5 unsolved murders and disappearances that seem very likely related. Known as the Bardstown murders or the Nelson County murders, something very strange is going on in a town about an hour south of Louisville. "2013 was the year it began, with 33-year-old Bardstown police officer Jason Ellis, a 7-year veteran of the department and a member of the K-9 unit. On May 25th, Ellis had just gotten off work and was driving home when he found a stack of freshly cut tree limbs blocking the road at his exit off the Bluegrass Parkway. After exiting his police cruiser to investigate, he was ambushed. Ellis was fatally shot multiple times with a 12-gauge shotgun.
This is the first police officer in the history of the Bardstown Police Department to be shot and killed in the line of duty. The officer had not called out on anything. We believe he had stopped to either assist something in the roadway.
Officer Ellis never fired a shot from his service weapon. It was still holstered. We believe that this was a premeditated murder. However, we are not certain whether Officer Ellis was the target.
The person who called 911 told officers she and another driver in a second vehicle couldn't take the on-ramp, so they got out to approach the officer after waiting a while. That's when they called 911.
His murder remains unsolved. Roughly a year later, in April 2014, the town was rocked by a brutal double homicide of 48-year-old Kathy Netherland and her 16-year-old daughter, Samantha. Their dead bodies were discovered by Kathy's father after she failed to show up for work at Bardstown Elementary School, where she taught special education. It was a savage double murder. Kathy had been shot several times, Samantha bludgeoned, and both their throats were slashed.
Kathy and Samantha Netherland made an impression.
Just to know the caliber of folks that they were, the kind of family they were, and how much they mean to us, and how sorely we're going to be missing them.
We're also told that Kathy Netherland's oldest daughter is in college. KSP is now asking for any residents and any businesses between Botland and Bardstown who have surveillance video of Springfield Road or Kentucky 150, that's this road here behind me, to contact KSP.
Kentucky State Police, they have no motive or suspect for the double homicide. One of the only clues released was a blurry gas station surveillance photo of a black Chevrolet Impala. Police suspect the driver of that car may have information about the case. Otherwise, that also remains unsolved. That is 2 cases within the space of a year that remain unsolved in this small town. There's a lot more to come. In 2015, 35-year-old Crystal Rogers, she vanished. Rogers was last seen on July 3rd at the home she shared with her boyfriend, Brooks Hugh. 2 days later, her mother reported her missing. The same day, her car was found abandoned along the Bluegrass Parkway with a flat tire, and her belongings still in it.
On July the 3rd, 2015, I got a phone call. At that minute, I just panicked. I was starting to fall apart in the living room. I'm like, there's something wrong. I'm telling y'all, I've been telling y'all all weekend, there's something wrong.
And what did she say to you about her future plans at that time?
She was planning on starting a new job and moving out and leaving the father of her child.
Whose name is Brooks?
Yes.
So she was going to leave him?
She was going to leave him.
And she told you that?
Yes.
Her aunt Shelley Barnes disappeared in 1979. This is not the first tragedy to befall his family, and it's not the last. That case was never solved. Crystal Rogers' mother, Sherry Ballard, believes that her daughter disappeared because she overheard something maybe she shouldn't have, related to the murder of police officer Jason Ellis. Rogers' parents were quick to voice their suspicions of Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks.
Had you and Crystal ever talked about breaking up?
I mean, obviously we have fought just like any other couple in the last several years. I mean, it's came up.
When you said you all had talk about splitting up, had that been more recently?
I don't remember the exact dates.
Well, the reason I ask is because there are some people that she's associated with that are telling us that she had made some tentative plans to leave.
That's news to me. I don't know anything about that.
However, Brooks' brother Nick was an officer within the Bardstown police. Less than 6 months after Crystal disappeared, Nick was fired from the police force for allegedly interfering with the investigation of Crystal Rogers' disappearance. Nick was accused of warning his brother that detectives planned to interview him and advised him not to speak with them.
In the interrogation room, Brooks got a call from his brother Nick, an officer in the local Bardstown police. And it sounded like Nick was telling his brother to end the interview.
I know that, but the way that I look at it is I'm innocent, I ain't done nothing wrong. I'll do exactly what you're telling me to do right now. You want me to get up and leave?
The sudden turn of events caught Detective Snow by surprise.
Though he later said that he only contacted his brother to tell him that they may be trying to trip him up and he should protect himself.
What are the questions? Do you know where Crystal is right now? Are you hiding any information about what happened to Crystal? See, you didn't tell me the truth on both of those questions.
I don't give a what your computer said, okay?
I think you do.
I'm telling you that I have been 100% honest with you.
Right. Then, bizarrely, on November 19th, 2016, Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, was fatally shot in the chest while out hunting by an unknown gunman.
From the minute that my daughter started missing, my husband was like the investigator. I knew in my heart it was no accident.
He was out with his 11-year-old grandson and on family property at the time of his death. Police ruled out the child as the shooter. Police have yet to classify Ballard's death as a homicide. Maybe it was accidental, but it seems quite strange and bizarre, maybe, that it's not a coincidence.
We're just asking anybody whether they think it's important, whether it's just something they noticed and it could not be anything to them. It may be huge for us.
Police have said at this time they have no reason to believe they're connected, but it's not something they're discarding either.
But Ballard family friend Kim Abel says nobody she knows believes it was an accident.
I feel like all the community is concerned with their safety. with all the unsolved murders.
Kentucky has had issues with drug epidemics, so it's not surprising that many believe these murders and disappearances could have something to do with a drug operation or drug trade operating in that area. Some believe that Jason Ellis was killed as he was cracking down on the drug trade. An anonymous inmate said Ellis was shot because he was close to an investigation of a ring of storage shed burglaries and business burglaries. According to the inmate, the burglarized storage units contained high-end antiques and drugs. The inmate also said that at least 4 men were hired by an unidentified person to carry out Ellis's murder.
Weeks after Bardstown police officer Jason Ellis was assassinated, the department receives threats claiming others are in danger.
These threats are even more alarming in light of the fact that Jason Ellis's killer is still on the loose. These threats were made last Thursday and Friday. One was a phone call. The other was a letter addressed straight to the police chief, both of them claiming that what happened to Officer Ellis will happen again.
I think it's somebody probably sitting at home that's half nuts and the other half's high on some type of drug, dreaming it up, wishing it would happen perhaps. In other words, if you're going to shoot one of us again or you want to harm one of us again, you're going to do it. You're not going to give us the heads up.
Amy Ellis, Jason's wife, worked as a substitute teacher at the same elementary school as Kathy Netherland. Kathy Netherland taught their son, who had Down syndrome. Perhaps Kathy or her daughter witnessed something which led to them being killed. It's likely Crystal did hear or learn something she shouldn't have, which led to her death. Her car, it was found on the same road on which Jason was killed. Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, was killed likely because he wouldn't stop investigating his daughter's disappearance. Now, hunting accidents, they happen all the time, but that's quite a coincidence, don't you think? Thank you so much for watching. As always, links in the description if you want to learn more about this case, maybe investigate it yourself, work away. I'll see you in the next video. Mike out. Hey you, and welcome. In this video we're going to talk about the mysterious, undeciphered notes of Ricky McCormick. Ricky McCormick's body was found in 1999 with notes that remain undeciphered to this very day. His death and the notes remain an unsolved mystery. So who was Ricky McCormick? He was born on June 14th, 1958. He was known for concocting tall tales and his displays of unusual behavior. It appears as though, by most accounts, Ricky was not entirely literate, and he was dyslexic, which is going to be a lot of fun when we get into his notes. His own mother said he was, not altogether there. Ricky was a high school dropout who held multiple addresses in Missouri and Illinois. He worked a number of jobs, moving a lot, manual labor mostly. In 1992, Ricky McCormick was arrested for statutory rape, having fathered 2 children with a 14-year-old girl. He ultimately pleaded guilty to these charges and served 13 months in jail. Ricky fathered 4 children over the years. Before his death, Ricky took at least 2 trips via bus to Orlando, Florida in 1999. He had allegedly brought back baseball-sized Ziploc bags of marijuana from Florida for the brother of the owner of the gas station where Ricky McCormick worked. He experienced chest pains and shortage of breath the week before he died, severe enough for him to check into the ER. Although he admittedly smoked at least a pack of cigarettes a day since he was 10 and typically drank more than 20 caffeinated beverages a day. the healthy lifestyle. On June 30th, 1999, Ricky McCormick's body was discovered between a cornfield and a road in St. Charles County, Missouri. The area his body was discovered in was a known criminal dumping ground. 41-year-old Ricky hadn't yet been reported missing. Ricky was verified to be alive only 5 days earlier, getting a checkup at the hospital. An employee at a gas station that Ricky frequented also claimed to have seen him on the day of his death. Ricky's body was discovered more than 20 miles from his home. He didn't drive, he didn't own a car, there was no public transport in the area. Also, Ricky's body was badly decomposed, which was odd because the medical examiners believed he'd only died 3 days before his body was found, and the weather hadn't been that warm. Authorities suspected that Ricky was killed elsewhere before his body was dumped. The medical examiner classified Ricky's death as undetermined after an autopsy and a toxicology exam were finished. However, the police considered it a homicide. After all, he was found in a known criminal graveyard, and his murder remains unsolved to this very day. Now, his death, it is a mystery, but it's not the one we're interested in this video. There was a series of notes found with him that remain undeciphered to this very day, which may or may not hold the clues to his death. Now, after his death was reported, nothing about the notes was mentioned. It wasn't until 12 years later when the FBI finally posted a notice on their website asking for help in deciphering the messages that anyone became aware there were undeciphered notes to begin with. His family, nobody knew anything about this. Investigators believe the notes found with Ricky McCormick were written within 3 days before his death. So, let's take a look, shall we? Ricky's family said they never knew him to write in code. He could barely write at all. The only thing he could do was like chicken scratch scribble. That's what they said. The notes are obviously a complete jumble. Dan Olson, chief of the FBI's Cryptanalysis and Racketeering Records Unit, said, "Breaking the code could reveal the victim's whereabouts before his death, and could lead to the solution of a homicide. It doesn't happen often that we have an unsolved cipher of this length and significance. The characters are not random. There are many E's, for example, that could be used as a spacer. There are many characteristics that suggest it could be solved, many patterns. The problem is, we just don't know why it is not solvable." And I mean, this is the FBI. You know, you'd think they would be able to solve this, but nope. No one knows who wrote it, but most cipher experts agree it's not random. It is a very sophisticated code. Dan Olson believes the notes to have been written by Ricky himself, but who really knows, perhaps Ricky was much more savvy than many people believed him to be. Are the messages some kind of shorthand that he invented, one that only he himself would understand? Unfortunately, there are no existing samples of Ricky's handwriting. As a result, there is nothing to compare the note with to determine if Ricky was the author. The most recognizable pattern is NCBE. Those 4 letters in that order are in the notes. A lot. Some have commented, considering Ricky's potential involvement with drug trafficking, it is possible that this is an uneducated drug dealer's shorthand. It breaks down who he sells to, how much he sells, a short description of how he knows them, recognizes them, or if he doesn't know them. Suggested meanings of NCBE, if it is indeed a shorthand code, includes variations of no cash being exchanged, no callback, E being a throwaway letter as suggested by Dan Olson. Another theory is that the notes indicate prescription drug usage and corresponding dates and times. The messages were a diary of his medical journal. suggesting what pharmaceutical drugs he was taking, when he was taking them, what he was taking them for, that maybe he had manic episodes, was bipolar. Some of the attempted deciphering of the notes believe that this is what they are. Chronic depression in September, really severe at the start of December in 1974, no cause of the episode, stuff like that. Now, there is no known evidence that Ricky was bipolar, though he was known to tell tall tales and had a history of unusual behavior. There is also no evidence that he had prescriptions for any of the medicines he referenced, but then again he dealt in drugs, so that wouldn't be hard for him to get, illegally. Another theory is that the killer themselves wrote the note as a red herring to distract police. Likely it's not even solvable, it's just there to take attention away from maybe other clues that were there at the scene of the crime. Or was Ricky simply the courier of the note and that's why he was killed? Was he relaying messages for shady people? He already was involved in drugs, did prison time, and happened to be dumped in a known criminal graveyard. Gregory Lamar Cox, a high-level drug dealer who operated in Ricky's neighborhood, was a suspect in several homicides. In fact, a confidential informant also told police that Knox was responsible for the murder of a black man who worked at a gas station and whose body was dumped. It was also reported that Ricky's girlfriend and aunt noticed that Ricky seemed frightened when he returned from Orlando. Did he know he was in danger? That he was going to end up in a dumping ground pretty soon? Honestly, I think the notes are shorthand written by someone who is half illiterate and half dyslexic. But if the notes are actually decipherable, that's a completely different question. The FBI had them for 12 years and couldn't crack them. They finally had to make it public, to ask the public for help, and still, nothing. But then that's why I make these videos. Maybe you can decipher them and help the FBI out. You never know. The notes found in Ricky McCormick's pocket are in the top 3 of uncracked coded communications, above which are the notes by the Zodiac Killer and a note from the Taman Shud mystery, which we'll get to in a later video at some stage. The Ricky McCormick mysterious messages notes, they're up there, and if they would have been cracked, I feel like they would have been cracked by now. I mean, you never know. That message could be the secret to something really important, unsolved mysteries, Ricky's own death, or it could be shorthand for a shopping list. Who knows? Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. I'll see you, as always, in the next video. Mike out.
The guy that was in the front of me was a monster. I mean, there was just no rationale for what happened.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Mike, and in this video we're looking at the disturbing tale of the Wells Gray Park murders. Are you familiar? If not, don't worry, I got your back. In August 1982, Bob Johnson, Jackie Johnson, and their daughters Janet and Karen went on a 2-week camping trip with Jackie's parents, George and Edith. This camping trip would be cut short by a very disturbed killer, but then the hunt began. This is the story of the Wells Gray Park murders. The Tree Generation family group travelled to the remote Wells Gray Provincial Park on August 2nd, 1982, a wilderness park located in east-central British Columbia, Canada, around 300 miles to the northeast of Vancouver. They pitched camp at a secluded area near the old Bear Creek prison site, with their grandparents arriving with a truck and camper van. On August 16th, Bob Johnson failed to show up for work at his job at the lumber mill, which was very unusual for him. A week later, he was reported missing to police. The group was reported missing on August 23rd, 1982.
For whatever reason, they seem to have just disappeared off the face of the earth. How could Grandma and Grandpa, Mom and Dad, and two little girls aged 11 and 12 or 13 or whatever they were, how could they disappear off the face of the earth?
The search centered on Wells Great Park, where the family were camping. On September 13, a mushroom picker reported finding a burnt-out car near Battle Mountain Road that was similar to the car the Johnsons were driving. When the Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers searched the vehicle, they found the burnt bodies of 4 missing adults who had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber weapon. In the trunk were the remains of the 2 girls. It was quickly assumed that a local was responsible for the murders. Forensic investigation of the bone fragments found they had been shot with a .22 caliber gun. Locals had seen the family camped at Bear Creek, and a search of the area found 6 spent .22 caliber ammunition shells. The grandparents' 1981 Ford truck and camper and their camping gear, boat and motor and other possessions were missing. During the spring of 1983, several methods were used to try and solve the murders and what happened to the family. In April, the crime was reenacted on site for TV cameras and aired across Canada in hopes that some significant clue would be triggered. In May, police drove a replica of the Bentley's 1981 Ford camper truck to Ontario and Quebec, as over 300 people had claimed they had seen such a vehicle heading east during the fall and winter. The reward for finding the truck was raised to $7,500, and 10,000 posters were sent out to police detachments and post offices across North America.
We're definitely closer, but we still haven't received that piece of information that we're looking for.
But then, on October 18th, 1983, 14 months after the murders had been committed, and the trail, it had gotten quite cold by that point. The grandparents' camper truck was finally located by 2 forestry workers near Bear Creek on an old logging road near Trophy Mountain. The spot was only 15 miles from the murder site and 20 miles from where the Johnsons' car was located. It had been burned using an accelerant and was well hidden on the side of a different mountain from where the car and bodies were found. It looked like there had been an attempt to drive it into a gorge, but logs had blocked its path. It now seemed more and more likely that the killer lived nearby, as these roads, they would have been a complete maze to anybody unfamiliar with the area. David William Shearing, who lived locally, was identified by someone who told police that, over a year earlier, Shearing had inquired about how to re-register a Ford pickup and repair a hole in its door. Shearing lived 3 miles from the site of the murders, and the police had never released the information about there being a bullet hole in the car. The RCMP found Shearing where he was to appear in court in a few days on a possession of stolen property charge of a significant amount of tools. He was taken into custody for questioning. Despite his reputation, and he had a bit of a criminal record, Shearing came from a respected family. Royal Canadian Mounted Police detectives Sergeant Mike Eastham and Constable Ken Leibel were convinced David Shearing was guilty from the beginning. Eventually, they got him to confess to his crimes. Shearing had accidentally admitted to Eastham that he had heard the murders were committed at Bear Creek, which was not information released to the public.
About 3/4 of an hour into the interview, I said to him, do you know where the Johnson and Bentleys were killed? He said, the old Bear Creek campsite, wasn't it? I mean, that just about floored me when he said, the Bear Creek campsite, because nobody knew that. I mean, it was something that we hadn't publicized, that it was the actual murder scene.
Eastham managed to convince Shearing to confess to the 6 murders, and he eventually agreed to reenact the murders, and even to turn over the murdered family's possessions. Crucially, he handed the police a .22 caliber Remington pump-action rifle, which was forensically matched as the murder weapon. Shearing initially stated in his confession that he shot the 4 adults as they sat around their campfire, then shot the girls as they slept in the tent, saying he only wanted to rob them. He told the RC MP that he loaded the bodies into the car, drove it by night to the mountainside, and set it on fire using 5 gallons of gasoline. He said he cleaned the campsite, then took the truck camper back to his nearby property, only to burn it later when he discovered how difficult it was to re-register. It later emerged that the real reason for the killings was pedophilia. He said he saw the family when they set up camp and spent several days spying on them. At dusk on August 10th, 1982, he walked into the campsite with his rifle and shot Bob Johnson, then Jackie, and then George and Edith in cold blood. The 2 girls were already in their tent. Shearing said he looked in, told them a dangerous biker gang was around and their parents had run for help. While they stayed in the tent, he said, he loaded the bodies of their parents and grandparents into the back seat of the family car and covered the bodies with a blanket. Shearing said he kept the girls alive for nearly a week, staying with them both at his ranch and at a small fishing cabin whilst repeatedly raping them. Shearing said he then took the girls back to his ranch, and on August 16th, one at a time, he took each girl for a walk in the woods, told her to turn around, then shot each sister in the back of the head. He took the bodies back to the Johnsons' family car, which he'd hidden and put them in the trunk. He drove the car to a secluded spot and burnt it. On April 16th, 1984, David Shearing pleaded guilty to 6 counts of murder. In his 10-minute summation, Supreme Court Justice Harry McKay described the crime as a cold-blooded and senseless execution of 6 defenseless and innocent people. A slaughter that devastated 3 generations in a single bound. What a tragedy. What a waste. And for what? He sentenced Shearing to life in prison with no parole for 25 years. This was the maximum possible penalty for second-degree murder and the first time in Canadian history that it had been handed out.
Most people were thinking that David Shearing should have the death penalty, which seems appropriate.
I know how I'd feel if it was one of mine.
Put him in an electric chair. To hell with him.
Oh, I think there should be capital punishment if he was the one that done it.
It's not like he just killed 1 person, he killed 6. You know, molested 2 girls. That's a sick person.
In September 2008, David Shearing was up for parole. The National Parole Board ruled that he still had violent sexual fantasies and hadn't completed sex offender treatment and was not ready for freedom. His second application in 2012 was also rejected.
Still a monster. He hasn't changed. He's still a monster. In all our family's eyes, he's still the monster.
Shearing applied again in 2014, then withdrew the request a month before the hearing. In the meantime, online and paper petitions garnered 15,258 signatures, urging the parole board not to release him.
Never heard he was sorry. And it took him 30 years to say it. Well, to stay there another 30 years to actually feel how sorry you really are.
Family members also appealed for relief from the agony of reliving the tragedy and campaigning against Shearing's release every few years. He now goes by his mother's maiden name, Ennis, and is married to a woman he met in prison. Well, that's the end of the Wells Grey Park murders. There's not really any lesson to be learned, no hope for the future in this one, just some sick shit that happened. I think the next video will be something light, maybe a conspiracy captain or something. Thanks for watching. I'm not going to say I hope you enjoyed the video, because it's quite disturbing. But I'll see you in the next one. Mike out.